Good morning, everybody. This is Jeff J. Brown in beautiful Shenzhen, China. 5 o'clock in the morning. It's dark, pitch black outside. And if you go north on my longitude over the North Pole and go down into the United States, we will arrive at approximately the proud state of Michigan, who I have on the line, Mr. Ron Acton. How are you doing this morning?
I'm doing better than I deserve.
All right, you're 5 o'clock in the afternoon the day before, so we're literally almost 180 degrees halfway across the planet from each other. And the reason I have, for my fans out there, the reason I have Ron on is I don't remember exactly when, maybe about a year ago, Ron was nice enough to have responded. He sent me an email, I think it was either maybe from the Shadow of Truth or the Daily Coin,
Right.
or
Yeah.
and saying I really liked your show, blah 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 blah, and I responded back. Anybody who emails me, I always send something back. And you and I exchanged, I don't know, 6, 8, 10 emails, and I all of a sudden I started noticing, my gosh, he's got a logo down there at the bottom of his name, and I'm going, oh, Jackson Tea Party, and I'm like going, wow, this guy's got a website. And so I started looking at it, and I thought, you know what? I know about as much about the Tea Party as what the mainstream media has shoved down my throat, and it's been a huge and influential movement in the United States. And I said, why don't I get Ron on and let's talk about the Tea Party, and then you said, well, I've got a bunch of questions about China, and I said, well, this would be a great interview. So we're going to do it sort of a back and forth, question and question. Nothing to prove here. It's all about informing our listeners out there, and obviously, Socialist China and Tea Party America are different. Maybe they're more similar than we know about. I don't know. We're going to find out. But this is an informational interview for someone sitting in the United States to ask about China, and for me to ask about the Tea Party. So anyway, thanks for coming on, Ron. I really appreciate it. And are you still?
Well, I really appreciate it also because I've lived out in San Francisco for 15 years, and all my friends were from all over the world: India, China, Philippines, Poland, Russians, and when I came back to Jackson, I looked around. I go, wow, there's a lot of white people here. And I tried to go to the Chamber of Commerce, and back in 1997, hooked up with them, and I started, first thing I was ni hao, and I started talking about how China is just developing and getting bigger and bigger, and we've got to start getting trade links with them. And Jackson, and they just looked at me and said, what? They're all Maoist, and he killed 80 million people.
Oh,
and I'm going, well, yeah, that was then. This is now, and they're kicking some butt over there, and they've got private banks like we have here in North Dakota, and that's where the companies are not taking all the money. The private banks aren't being parasites on the people, and they couldn't wrap their heads around it, and so I got away from them, and. So it's been interesting, this whole thing.
Well, go ahead.
Well, I think you wanted to ask me about the Tea Party.
Yeah, just a little bit about the history, and how you got involved and why you got involved. I'll be honest with you. The only thing I really know about the Tea Party is before we moved back to China in 2010. I remember this Jon Stewart. Thing that he did, where he was making fun of the Tea Party and panning a camera on an empty sidewalk, saying this is nobody showed up, but this is being exaggerated, blah 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 blah, and and everything, and that just stuck in my head. But now, of course, I realize that he's just a part of the mass media,
The
and
Mockingbird media.
yeah, the Mockingbird, the CIA media, and so just tell us about it. I mean, I want to learn too. I mean, I'm curious, and I know there's a lot of people out there across the planet who'd like to know, would like to know more about it from an informed perspective. So please take it away.
Sure. Well, I come from Jackson, we're the birthplace of the Republican Party. And back when I was 14, 15, my parents were taking me to John Birch meetings. And being the rebel I was, I'd still go out and I went to the White Panther meetings. And oh, it was funny. One guy, I went into the John Birch meeting. I got the long hair down the middle of my back, but the bell bottoms on. He stopped me at the door and he says, "Are you a patriot?" And I said, "Yeah, I'm working undercover." He went, "Good boy, good boy." He didn't know what undercover I was doing, but I was a good boy. But you don't know. But anyway, what happened originally with the Tea Party was back in Boston after the 9/11 Commission report about 9/11. The Tea Party started, and they made up a mock of the book, and they threw it into the Boston Harbor. Later on, the Tea Party Express started, and it looked like a George Soros operation. If you know, I hope you
Oh yeah, I know all about him.
Yeah, well, it works in the Republican Party and Democratic Party, and that's where we say it's like, you're from the Midwest, you know about Evan Root and Johnson Motors, outboard motors. Yeah, you can exchange either part on them, and they've been rigging the system. And so I started off with the Republican Party, and I was watching what was happening during Barack Obama's election, and they were having protests, and everybody in, nobody out. It was all about health care, and they were running this Barack Obama from no place, and they were putting Joe Biden as his vice president. And then they were putting up John McCain and Sarah Palin as the vice president. And I'm going, why are they doing that? They should just reverse that, put Palin against Barack Obama, and she'll kick his butt. But they wanted to lose on purpose. And I'm going, okay. And I have a security background, dealing with banks and the military. And so my folks are from, what do you want to call it? I've been trained after the first bombing in the World Trade Center out in San Francisco. There was so many government programs so that you can learn everything about what's going on with terrorism all around the world.
Absolutely.
And so I got trained on all that stuff, and I know I can be a terrorist. But anyway, we started going to the Republican parties, but then I realized there's we call it the Jackson 400. They control Jackson, or a political party does, and the Democrats weren't really that heavy. But then I realized that, hey, these guys, well, aren't we all Republican? Aren't we all Tea Partiers? And I'm going, no, not really, because they're saying this, we're the exceptional and indispensable people. And I went, well, doesn't that mean we can other people can be dispensed with and killed, and exceptional? I don't know if we're really that exceptional, because I read the bell curve. And Asians have an IQ maybe around 105. White people maybe 100, and you just go down the road until you get down to some people in the Sudan who have an IQ of 80, and each one of those different IQs take a different type of political forum to make it work. And so I didn't like what they were saying. I went to some of the conventions of the Republican Party, not I never joined the Republican Party. I just went as a guest. And they're doing all stupid things up on stage, and then they get in the back room and they decide how it's going to go down.
Mm-hmm.
And people were ticked off in that election in 2008, because the Republican Party just followed whatever I always say that they're just grabbing the tail of the other elephant like in a circus, and they're walking down the road. So my sister in 2009 said, Ron, you know all about the internet. Why don't you go ahead and get the domain names for this? And I said, okay. So I got those. And then I started a website, and this was before Facebook, I think, or it was just getting started. And we started having meetings, and we had huge crowds, 20, 30 people. I got in Tea Party Express. I had 1,000 people at the rally there with 2 buses, and parking lots were just full. And but they wouldn't let their our 2 local politicians running for office speak. They only put up the congressman. And I went, and they never talked to me and never said thank you. And I said, okay, fine. But I kind of went, something's not right here. We're rigging the system. And my old saying now is anything that can be rigged will be rigged. Or if you ain't cheating, you ain't trying hard enough.
Yeah, the elites have a way of just taking over and taking control and setting the agenda for their benefit.
Right. And but then I found out where the Republican Party meets over at this restaurant, Steve's. And anyway, we started having meetings. And then I got the coup d'etat where the one gentleman, I'm not going to mention his name, but he went ahead and he talked to my vice chairman and said, or the treasurer, and he says, I don't like what Ron's saying. We have to take the money and put it out of the bank account, take it to another bank account. And my vice treasurer was a doctor of psychology, and he said, I think that's illegal. And so nonetheless, he left, and then he came. Then he comes in again, and because we were right at that point where the IRS came in and started investigating all the Tea Parties, and boy, did membership fall off. I had 400. I've got 400 subscribers to my email, and anyway, he came in and we were saying we're going to go with a 501c3 or 4 or whatever. And we said, no, all we have to do, make it very simple. You're a corporate, nonprofit organization. And still, he came in again and said, you're a 501c and I want all your financial records because that's what the law says. And I said, no, we don't have to. He's disrupting a meeting. And so the volume has gone down on the amount of people, but what we wanted to do was stay with the money, follow the money like they did with Deep Throat, with Nixon.
Yeah.
And if you follow the money, you can find out anything. And I brought in the Democratic Party to speak because it's a local, all politics is local. And I said, you can speak here because taxes, we all got to pay them. And Republicans were very upset about this because, hey, you're supposed to be Republican. And then I was with the Tea Party Patriots also, but they started going off on weird stuff. We got to do this and that. And then it turned into, it was just an organization to go ahead and generate more money for the leaders of the organization. Mm-hmm. And so I'm saying, I want to back out of that. So we've just been an educational group talking about the Constitution, which we don't have anymore because we have gone. It's Patriot Act, 9/11. We all know JFK, and we know 9/11 was a false flag.
Absolutely.
Because terrorism is an amorphous word. It doesn't mean anything, but we find out more. The internet has been wonderful because it's now like the Gutenberg press. If you remember, yep. And this is where we had the Reformation, and we could come into the priest and say, I'm reading this in English and you got it in Latin. It doesn't say the same thing, baby. And so we're putting them to their hands. So now we've got all these new control. And Stephen Molyneux, I got to give him credit on this. He put out a thing about your enslavement. And he described everything as our governments or our countries are farms, and politicians do human livestock management. And it depends on the IQ of the people. What are we going to have? And if you got something like Saddam Hussein, maybe the people don't have the highest IQ, so you have to have a very dictatorship, so to speak, to make it work. And the higher the IQ, perhaps and people can argue with me. I don't care, but that's where I'm looking at China and you folks, or I shouldn't say you, but
where I live, my neighbors.
Your neighbors looked at this and said, we got to have where are the flaws in the system, and is it really communism, or it's like we got to take care of the money. Because that's the most important thing, and that's got to be controlled. We don't want private hands on the financial system, such we have with the Federal Reserve, or as Rothschild said, I don't care who runs the country as long as I control the money, because that controls everything. Mm-hmm. And money is 50% of whatever you do. So the Tea Party has withered as far as our participants. However, when we come in, we talk on a global strategic stage. In fact, one of my speakers didn't show up, so I had to tell everybody about the One Belt, One Road and Eurasia and what is happening, because there's no media coverage on this. All we have is a mockingbird media.
Yeah.
And that's where I read your book. I got it on Kindle, China Rising. I got to tell you, people have got to get that and read it. And then you've got a new book coming up. What's that? We're communists, damn it?
Yeah, China is communist, damn it, Dawn of the Red Dynasty, which explains in detail about how China works and why it is what it is today and where it came from, and that should come out hopefully May or June. So that'll be available. So thank you for reading it. Okay, well, that's interesting. I learned then that the first thing so the trigger that started the Tea Party was 9/11 and the 9/11 hoax. I mean, that's unbelievable. I had no idea. And they threw a book in the Boston Harbor.
Yeah, it was a big model of it. It's about 6 foot by 8 foot. They threw it off a bridge into the Boston Harbor.
What was it supposed to be? The report on 9/11?
Yeah.
Oh, and so they knew. So way back then they knew that it was a false flag.
Correct. Nothing made sense.
Yeah,
well, remember Trump was talking. The Muslims were laughing at this. Well, I know Muslims, and some of them were going ha ha ha. But then they looked at it and they said, wait. We just knocked down 2 buildings, the biggest banks in the world. That was the biggest bank in the world. That was a bank heist, actually. And they went and it got into the Pentagon, and they're going, we're not ninjas. We're not Jedi Knights. How in the hell did we do that?
Yeah.
I mean, on the surface, and then the propaganda, what was it, Leonard Bernays and I'm trying to think of the other guy.
Edward Bernays' propaganda, the propaganda book by Edward Bernays.
Yes, Edward Bernays. But anyway, and and they've got control of the media, and and again, these are the people I'm dealing with are all grandmas and grandpas. I'm 63, and they just now they're moving into their nursing homes, and in fact, when I started the Tea Party. No Republicans would help me. They said, no, we're all Tea Partiers. You just stay with the Republican Party. I had to go outside and find, what was it? Paul Winter. He was the Johnny Appleseed of the Tea Party. He's passed on, and I miss him dearly. But he started 6 Tea Parties here in Michigan and just devoted his life to that. And he was a total patriot. And he knew all the fakeness that we're talking about that's happening in America. But now, like I say, with the internet, Now we have Alex Jones. We have you. We have X-22 report. All these Russia Today. I look at that every day. What are they
Yeah,
saying?
yeah, I do
You
too.
really figure out. Now that China just came out with their YouTube news, just like Russia Today. So I take a
Yeah,
look at see how, because I'm trying to get this feel of what's going on, what's the intonation, where are they pushing things one way or another? Does that sound right, or doesn't it sound right? And so we just keep on moving on, and now we're looking at what's going to be now the Trump. Oh, geez, the Tea Party with Trump doing what he did over in Syria, as I understand it. Trump called him up and said, "We got to bomb to do something. We got to bomb a military base. You got any crappy military base that needs bombing?" And he said, "Yeah, we got one. Well, you got an hour. We're going to bomb it with some Tomahawk missiles." And what's come out on that? Only 20 of them reached there, but everything was pulled out of it.
yeah.
So
It was just all a mirage to make to. I think somebody made a comment to me last night that Trump may have felt obligated to do that just to look, as some red meat for the war party and to make the military look good, but the Syrians knew it was coming, the Russians knew it was coming. They had
yep,
pulled out all the equipment.
yep.
All that got hit were some old planes that were in the repair shop, and the runway wasn't even touched. I mean, the whole thing was and as I said yesterday in an interview with Godfrey Roberts, I said,
Yeah.
that chemical attack may not even have happened. I mean, it may have just been a complete hoax. I mean, we don't even know anymore what's true and what's not true.
What intel I've got on it, is that the Syrians bombed a warehouse that ISIS was running, and what happened was there was all different chemicals in there, and when it hit, it blew it up, and then it wafted down the street, downwind, and people got sick. But they've got
Okay.
the ISIS. There's ISIS. Have the masks on and the gun, and then they take that off, the mask and the gun, lay that down. Then they put on a white construction helmet, call themselves the White Hats.
The white helmets.
White helmets, and Syria's going, who are these people? We don't know who they are. News media will not report they're fake, and all this. And I heard some other stories where they put a needle, a long needle with adrenaline into the baby's heart and killed them.
That sounds like Mockingbird to me. CIA kind of stuff. That's ridiculous.
Oh yeah, I mean, and we know now that, and Putin already brought it out last year. He says we know Syria's involved. We know CIA, Mossad, Qatar, Bahrain, they're funding this. The weapons are coming in, and they're being funneled to ISIS. And this is what do you call it? Not a proxy army, or they're mercenaries.
Yeah,
They're
mercenaries, but they are
mercenaries.
proxies. They're the proxies of the United States and NATO,
and the whole deal is about the oil pipelines.
From Iran to Turkey.
No. This is from Saudi Arabia.
Oh, that's right. The one from Kuwait.
Saudi Arabia.
From Kuwait to Turkey. That's right.
Right.
Saudi
That's
Arabia,
the way they want the.
Right.
The old, BP and Shell and all of them. They want to run the pipeline through there, and but Russia and Netanyahu are talking to each other every day because they want to go ahead and develop the Levant oil field off the coast of Israel.
Yeah.
And we're not supposed to talk to Russia, but Netanyahu can, and we give him $30 billion.
Yeah.
And it's like, excuse me? You're not taking care of us Americans? And we're calling them out on this. This is, America first. We'll keep the money here. What are you doing? And it's becoming so convoluted, but it's very nice that we have the internet and we can bring all this information out. And so I kind of went off course there.
No, you didn't. Okay, well, I tell you what. You have a series of questions, and about
Yeah, yeah, I
China.
do.
So go ahead and ask me a question about China. We've now I understand a lot about the Tea Party. I can see that you all are anti-establishment. That you all have been. They tried to co-opt you. You rejected it, and you have now become an alternative source of information. You're very local. What's the population of Jackson, Michigan?
Well, it was 60,000. Now I think it's 50,
Okay, 40.
40,000.
Okay, so it's not a huge place, and so
And the Tea Party is not unified. We're all different. Like there's
yeah.
a 9/11 group down, 9/12 group down in Adrian, and they were totally rejected. They wanted to go with Ted Cruz. The Tea Party Patriots wanted to go with Ted Cruz.
Yeah.
And I looked at it. I looked at at Trump, and I said, you know what? Considering our financial situation here in America, with all the debt, the biggest debtor country in the world or in the universe from wherever, he's going to be the emergency manager. And I also found out with Trump that for the past 25 years, he has not been able to get any financing from America or Europe. They were just ticked off at him because he was working with Ross Perot. And so he had to go to China and other places in the Pacific Rim and Dubai or the Arab Emirates to get funding for things. And now the national or the Republican National Committee's finance director is Steve Wynn, who owns Wynn Casinos, who is in Macau.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of back things. So when I saw this thing where Xi Jinping met Trump at his home. I like the way you said that in that last interview at Mar-a-Lago.
Yeah.
He said, I kind of thought, is everything going to plan? And Trump said, yes, everything's going to plan.
Well, shoot me a question about China.
Yeah, we have this thing called Obamacare. Tell me about the healthcare system in China. How does that work? Because Obamacare is killing us.
Well, when obviously from 1949 to 1970, Mao died in 76, but the policies did not. The reform and opening up by Deng Xiaoping didn't happen starting until 1978, and to be honest, it didn't really start getting into gear until about 1980, 4 years after Mao died. But obviously, when Mao was alive and they had the Iron Rice Bowl, all medical health care was provided, and it was essentially free. China had one of the most celebrated and successful medical systems called the Barefoot Doctors. They had millions of people who were not super highly trained, but they were able to go into the countryside. And from 1949 to 1978, the average lifespan in China increased from something like 30 to 35 years of age to 60 years of age in just 25 years, which is pretty phenomenal. And now China has a life expectancy about like Eastern Europe. And then in the 80s with Deng, he just kind of opened the floodgates and just let stuff happen, and all these government hospitals started trying to make money. It really didn't work. I mean, we were here in the early 90s, and people were dying and suffering outside hospitals because they didn't have the money to get in, and it was just not a good system, and there was a lot of suffering. And so then in 2000, right after we got back here in 2010, in 2011, Hu Jintao, the previous president of China, said, civilized countries don't do this to their people. We need to guarantee that our people have basic health care. And so they rolled out their version of the European universal health care, basically Social Security, like the American Social Security system, with medical care, covered by the government, and it's not a rich program. It's not, and it's not 100% covered. The people still have to pay a certain amount. They pay about the government pays about 80%, and the sick person pays about 20%. So that's what they've gone back to. It's working well. We've talked to people who've had surgeries, and you go to the doctor. You can imagine the computer program to try to just even, the database for 1.4 billion people, and 34, political, entities with, the different provinces. And so they started it out in 3 provinces in 2011, and it's all been rolled out in the last 2 or 3 years to every province, and now they're trying to integrate the databases between the provinces. If you get care in your home province, it's essentially covered for 80 to 90%. If you get care outside of your area, you may pay half. And again, all the thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of public hospitals were brought in line and said no more racketeering and ripping people off, and having people die in the waiting room because they don't have any money. So they put a stop to that. The hospitals are required to take people. If you're a hardship case, you can take your case my husband died and I don't have any more money, and you can always plead your case, but they can no longer leave you dying on the gurney in the waiting room or in the hallway. So it's much better. It's not we don't have time to go into Obamacare here, but it's Social Security like in the United States, which is basically European universal health care, except in the United States it's not universal, but it's a government program. Prices are controlled, and most people get good health care when they need it, and at an affordable price. So that's the long and the short of it.
How about the pharmaceuticals? Because we're getting
hit here. Yeah, the pharmaceuticals are also paid for if the doctor does give a prescription. And of course, here, we have traditional Chinese medicine, which is a whole nother spectrum of medical care that's not.
I've drank some of those tonics. Oh my God.
Yeah, and so that's covered if it is a prescription from the doctor. Medication here is pretty cheap. Again, the prices are controlled. The pharmaceutical companies and they're very careful. They For example, I take a traditional Chinese medicine for my prostate gland, and in Beijing, there's a company in Jilin, which is up in the north. In fact, Jilin is on the border with North Korea, and that company, has been allocated the Beijing, market. And now that we're down here in Shenzhen, I take the same medication, but it's a different company, and they have obviously been allocated, Guangdong, Shenzhen, Guangzhou. So the government is very good about making sure that you don't end up with a SmithKline French or some monster, Merck, company that just, becomes a monopoly. So the government is very good about saying, okay, we've got 10 big pharmaceutical companies. Okay, you take this area, you take this area, you take this area, you take this area, and that way they can all prosper and develop.
And no price gouging.
And no price gouging. Now they've been complaining just last year, They did increase the price, and on a few drugs, they allowed the pharmaceutical companies to. They let the prices float. This is how the Chinese work. They'll experiment with the 2 or 3 things and try 2 or 3 things and see how it works. To increase the chance, to increase innovation, so that they have some money for for research and development, but they're not going to just open up the floodgates and let the pharmaceuticals charge whatever they want. And there's some drug, that traditional Chinese medicine I take for my prostate is almost exactly the same price as it was in Beijing. I mean, so and it's 3,000 kilometers away, and so it's a good system. They're taking care of 1.4 billion people, almost 20% of humanity. It's a massive task. And everybody that I've talked to, and I speak Chinese and have a lot of Chinese friends. Everybody is happy. I mean, they're not. Of course, everybody would like it, to be totally free, but and everybody, not everybody, but a lot of people, yearn for the Mao days, when they didn't have to worry about it, and it was all covered. Oh, of course. And but everybody's relatively pleased, and it's getting better and better. Right now, the big problem is you're from Beijing, you're in Guangzhou, you get really sick, you go to the hospital, and they can't, they have not integrated the databases yet, so they can't find you, in Guangzhou on the database, oh, you're from Beijing, and so you have to pay for it and then get reimbursed, and it's a big pain. Whereas in Europe, you have a universal health card. You can be in Spain, just about anywhere. Maybe not in Britain, but and they're leaving anyway.
Yeah, but, I don't know how long that's going to last.
And well, supposedly, and I'll see it. I'll believe it when I see it. But they anyway, in France and Spain and the classic Western European countries, they swipe a card in a thing, and literally, I mean, your records pop up on a screen, and they can see your history, and it's really an amazing system. But they've had 50 years to integrate this, the database for Europe, and so they've got 500 million people instead of 1.4 billion. So the Chinese are getting there. They've got supercomputers that are faster than the United States is in Europe.
Yeah.
And so they'll get it. I mean, when you look at what they have done, Ron, since 2010, 2011, it's unbelievable. Where how they just made.
My friends just got back from my buddy. He and his wife, Peng, they've been married for 35 years. He got back and he said, Ron, this is unbelievable. We were on the high speed rail. It's wide berths. It's got TVs just like an airplane, and it's more comfortable than riding in a car on a road. And we're traveling at 235 miles an hour. He was amazed.
Yeah.
My wife's cousin just got back from China, and he was just, oh my God, they are so advanced, which may lead me into another question. Do you have to go through the TSA in China?
No, we don't. My wife and I are always a little surprised. I mean, of course, even before, the 9/11, false flag, everybody had to go through, a certain amount of, the X-ray detectors and that kind of stuff. But no, nothing like that here. I mean, they don't have body scanners, and it's just, in fact, it's just like pre 9/11. You put your bags in the machine, the X-ray machine. It goes through. Yeah. You walk through a metal detector. If it goes, ding ding, they have a metal detecting wand. That they're not groping you, they're not touching you. There's no rooms, for oral cavity checks, and all this other crazy stuff like they do in the United States,
Oh yeah.
so no,
Yeah,
it's
well, this is where my buddy was saying the last time he went through with his the mother. She was 90 years old in a wheelchair. She's Chinese, and they wheeled her off, and she doesn't speak English, and she was yelling and screaming, and he was like, "What are you idiots doing?" It didn't make any sense. Now they're also doing something in America here, where right before you get on the plane, there's two guards there, and they say, in full military dress, black outfits with guns, and they say, "Put your eye up here. We're going to get a retina scan on you."
Are you
That's what's
kidding?
happening.
Are you kidding?
No.
Oh my God.
And it's like you just kind of sit there and look at it and back off, or say, well, if I back off and I lose my flight, I lose my money, and I'm an enemy of the state, maybe I should just go ahead and do it and just be part of it. And it's getting weird.
Well,
I
that's
went to Switzerland.
that's unbelievable.
Yeah, when I was in Switzerland, I was pulled off when I went over there, and I came back in Detroit, and they said, "Oh yeah, they just pulled me out. I was a random." And I said, "Yeah, I know about all this and blah blah blah." And we went through the whole deal, and my mother was freaking out because she's 80 years old. "What are they doing? What are they doing?" And I said, "I'm okay. I'm okay. I know what I'm doing here." Yeah, it's getting weird over here.
Well, they don't do any random checks. I mean, to be honest with you, traveling here is, now they do things like you cannot, and I don't know how it works in America anymore, but like yesterday I went and bought high-speed train tickets for my wife and myself we're going to go to Guangzhou, which is about 100 and something kilometers north of here. Fans out there may know it as Canton, and because I also have a French passport, and so we're going to go to the consulate in Guangzhou to vote at the presidential elections, the first round of the presidential elections on Sunday. And so I went down to my local ticket office, and you cannot buy a train ticket without an ID. You have to have a passport or a national ID. But I mean, after that, I mean, it's almost a formality, and that's even in train stations on the streets and stuff. Most of the police are carrying. Are not even armed. They don't even have They don't even have billy clubs.
Sweet.
And I mean, and there are some places where they have guns and stuff, but it's not like you go to Europe and people there's squads of military people running around with machine guns, and that you don't see here ever unless there's a suspected event that's going to that they've sniffed out or whatever. So well, shoot me another question, and then
Sure.
and then I'll ask you a question about the Tea Party. Ask me one more.
Yeah, this is where people do not understand the Chinese philosophy, morals, ethics compared to Western, because I have read Lao Tzu and Chang Tzu and Sun Tzu, The Art of War, but the philosophy, which is different than the Greek philosophy that we come from. And I understand there's a heavenly mandate. Would you explain the heavenly mandate?
Yeah, the heavenly mandate actually goes back, 3,500 years ago in the Shang Dynasty, and became really formalized 2,500 years ago, about the time that Confucius lived, who predated Aristotle, Plato, Socrates. And the heavenly mandate states that the ruler, the leader of the country, can stay in power as long as they are doing a good job, they're providing safety, security, maintaining the boundaries of the country, and giving the people an opportunity to, eat, clothe themselves, shelter themselves, and in the and avoid instability
So,
and strife, in their daily lives. If all that starts to happen, if the borders become threatened, if the ruler loses control and greedy people start to abuse the local the local population, and that happened a lot, and obviously in 5,000 years of history, that happened a lot. But as soon as that happens, then the people have the right to rise up, and they literally have an expression called to grab a bamboo spear and overrun the palace. And this is how
pitchforks.
literally, the pitchfork, the Chinese pitchfork, which would be a bamboo spear, and to overrun the palace and get rid of the ruler, and then a new ruler would be chosen. Oftentimes it was hereditary, over the millennia. And there's been some great leaders, and there's been some terrible leaders, and there's been some effective leaders, and some, not so effective leaders, and, kind of like everywhere else in the world. But that's the mandate. I mean, and the Communist Party, lives and breathes this. They know they've got to bring home the bacon. They've got to provide opportunities, safety, stability, economic, growth, etc., if they expect to stay in power, and it's not cynical. There's nothing cynical about it. It's just that they realize that they can't rest on their laurels, and they've got to keep the people happy. And this goes back to Mao Zedong. I mean, his most famous saying was "Serve the people," and that is something that the party lives by, and they realize that if they screw up and they get greedy, and now Xi Jinping is just going after corruption. I mean, he's just like hundreds of thousands.
I saw the TV show that you've got now that's gone viral. It's Anti-Corruption Squad or something.
Yeah. And he's that's the big weak point right now. There's two big weak points in China: is the environment and the environmental, cleanliness.
Oh yeah.
And because of all the breakneck and unrestrained, growth in the 80s and the 90s. Yeah. And then the corruption, not just in the government, but also in the halls of business, and because corporate corruption and government corruption are like a hand in a glove. I mean, they work together, and so that's basically it. The heavenly mandate. I mean, and as you mentioned, their moral philosophies and stuff. It's not Western. It is Buddhist. It's a mixture of Taoism,
right.
The Tao by Lao Tzu. It's a mixture with Confucianism and Buddhism, and basically, if you ask the average Chinese and they say they're Buddhist, they for them, and I mean, unless you're a Tibetan Buddhist or in a particular sect. It's just an amalgamation of Buddhism, Confucianism, and Taoism.
I'm sorry to interrupt. It's just like there's a difference between the Irish Catholic Church and the Italian Catholic Church.
And so
they don't get along sometimes.
And Chinese democracy is different than Western democracy. Here, Greek democracy is based on the individual, and Chinese democracy is based on first comes the state, then comes the society, then comes your local community, then comes your neighborhood, then comes your family, and then last but not least, comes the individual. So everything is turned exactly upside down. And so people, in the West, think that China does not have a democracy, but they have a very thriving democracy. And
Excuse me, let me interrupt. You had it was a dictatorship democracy. How
yeah,
do you explain that?
well, it's called the dictatorship.
Your books in China Rising.
Yeah, the dictatorship of the democratic dictatorship of the people. And basically, this goes back to Lenin, where he had democratic centralism, where everybody, can argue and debate about a particular point, but once to come up with the best decision, argument, debating and talking and looking for different solutions. But once the decision is made, the final decision is made, then everybody has to back it. That's basically democratic socialism, democratic centralism. I'm sorry, where you need to back the final decision. That's the even if you don't agree with it, you need to back it because we have to stick together. The dictatorship, the democratic dictatorship of the people, is basically Confucianism. Confucianism is that the people accord the power to their rulers to make the best decisions in their interests and to make sure that the system is maintained. In other words, that it does not become a system that's not socialist. Because the Chinese Constitution is very clear. They said, we have enemies. We know they're out there. We know they're trying to sabotage us, and basically, the CIA, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. NSA. They're trying to change our way of life and our government and our society, and so that also is part of the dictatorship. And it's unfortunate because it's a terrible word. In English, as I explain, it jars the ears. Dictatorship, and so it's not a great choice, but that's what Lenin came up with, and I wish he had come up with a different word, but. And that's basically it. The people trust. It's the heavenly mandate. We trust you to maintain our borders, maintain our way of life, provide us with opportunities.
And it's okay to be different than the Westerns.
And
philosophy.
Yeah. And if you screw up, we're going to grab our bamboo spears and charge the palace. I mean, that's basically it. And so. As I said in China's Communist Damn It, which is coming out, I said, Karl Marx and Emperor Tang, going back, to 1700 BC, they have a lot in common. I mean, the Chinese have been, basically because of this, inverted state society, community, neighborhood, family, individual is in last place. This communist socialist, mentality has been around, long before Karl Marx, was born. And so it does, and I don't expect, Ron, I don't expect Americans to adopt the Chinese system, but don't expect the Chinese to, adopt Western democracy, because they have had, and they continue to have, and they continue to thrive with their version of democracy, and they love it. They're very happy.
Yeah, everybody is rising. The boats all rise in the water. Everyone is very happy and very rich.
Yeah, and so
the only thing I've heard is that now tourism is so big that they're called Mark Twain called the ugly Americans abroad.
Yeah, there's
now
the ugly Chinese.
The ugly Chinese abroad.
Yeah, that's happening.
The Confucian schools from China are moving into all different countries. Could you explain the Confucian schools?
Well, this is a philosophy. It's very paternalistic. And again, and you can see why Mao, tried to, take down sort of Confucius, because he was very paternalistic and very elitist. It's trust us to take care of you. take, he was Confucius was very big on the family, filial piety, filial piety,
Yep.
respect mother, respect father.
Right.
And actually, when you look at, the Confucian is sort of from the bottom up. You are the individual. Your job is to take care of mom and dad. Big brother takes care of little brother, and big sister takes care of, little sister, and it's very hierarchical. And so, and
May I
then,
stop you right here?
yeah,
Just for a second.
yeah.
I have a personal statement that I have said to so many people. We want our children to be wise and prosperous because they will be choosing our nursing homes.
And so the Confucian system is again, trust us. The best leaders will rise to the top, and
Right.
the leaders are supposed to be noble and honest and hardworking and caring, and obviously over 5,000 years, a lot of the times that didn't happen, and
Yeah.
and they grabbed the bamboo spears and overran the palace, and got somebody. Finally, they would get somebody, and who was noble and honest and hardworking and sincere, and most dynasties in China, they lasted 200 or 300 years. Some of them some of them less, some of them more. And
Unless they devalued their currency
yeah,
and war.
yeah, exactly. And eventually, war, internal strife, etc. Would greed, corruption, the standard, scenario of governance, would finally, make them illegitimate. And but that's basically Confucian. It's revolving around the family, the family's role in society, and maintaining order, harmony, stability, and it kind of
Prosperity.
yeah, it kind of flies in the face of of Greek Greek individualism and capitalism, but again, they've been doing it for a long time, and they're the longest continuous civilization, culture, language, whatever you want to call it, in human history, and so you have to give the Chinese their chops. I mean, their system has proven itself for 5 millennia, and with the CIA, the NSA, and NATO and the American Sixth Fleet, please leave us alone. We're doing fine.
Well, we've lost our prestige in the world because of all of our wars, from Libya, Afghanistan, on and on. And it's what you mentioned in your book, China Rising, is just imperialism for natural resources. And I think this, as Catherine Austin Fitts said, the 200-year-old banking warfare model is coming to an end. China now has are putting with the One Belt, One Road. They're putting up all these communication satellites. Mm-hmm. Since they have fastest computers in the world, they can do quantum physics. What was that thing? I was looking at it.
They're also doing these massive, what they call big number programs, where they stuff the supercomputer with just billions of pieces of information, like on pollution or traffic and stuff like that, and they're using these supercomputers with these big number programs now. Healthcare would be another one. So and China, they do have one military base in Djibouti now.
I heard about that.
But that's
next to the Marines.
Yeah, right next to the Marines, but when seven out of the 10 boats that go through the
Yeah.
through the Red Sea,
Yeah.
and the Suez are came from a Chinese port. They want to make sure that their boats are, and their government, the Chinese government, pays for the military to go out and protect their ships, from
Yeah.
pirates, and they don't leave it to the shipping companies. Why? Because the shipping companies are government owned. And I did want to point out, I think you just the banks here are publicly owned, like in North Dakota, not
Right.
privately owned. They're publicly owned, and
Excellent.
and that's why, and they don't borrow money from the Rothschilds. They print their own money.
Right.
So they're not,
Gold, and they believe in gold and silver.
yeah, I can walk into any branch, any bank in China, and walk out with as much gold as money as I can, afford to buy. And gold is sold at every teller counter in China. And
Wow.
little 20 grams, from 20 grams to, well, in stock, 20 grams to 100 grams of of anything. And then you can order, anything up to it. You can even order a 1 kilo bar of gold if you want. And they have 12. I don't know why they come up with 12, but they have 12 kilo, up to 12 kilograms of silver. These beautiful ingots, and yeah, all that you can just buy at a bank here, just like withdrawing.
Amazing.
Withdrawing money, you just withdraw gold. So.
Well, I keep on looking at those, those ghost cities, and I remember my relatives came from Bohemia, and Czechoslovakia, and Germany, and England, because they had so many wars, they wanted to get the hell out, and they came to America where they could do anything they want. I'm thinking maybe these ghost cities may be filled up with people from all over the world that just want to get out. Because it's not oppressive. Like, we're being watched all the time. It's 1984 over here with our Facebook. We found out that if you don't pay for it, you are the product. And they're just gathering all information on us at all times. It's a police state.
Well, your thing about the retina scans at the airport. I'm going. My wife and I are going to go back to the States this summer. That's really weird. That's just right out of a science fiction
It's not
movie.
done every place, but it's already come up. Somebody just told me about this.
Oh my
They said
God.
that was just a whoa
moment. Yeah.
Yeah, you just kind of, and you got two big guys there, all dressed in black with helmets on, and they're telling you what to do, and you're intimidated.
Yeah.
I'm not really intimidated by all this because I just kind of laugh at it and say, "Come on, guys, what you got family, don't you? Do you really want this?" And they go, "Oh, that's you know who I am," and yeah, I got a whole dossier on me, I'm sure.
It's funny. Last summer we went back to France to be with my wife's family, and our daughter moved with us here in 2010. So she basically went from 8th grade on up. She's been in China, and she's still here, going to university in her first year, and she loves it here. And we were back in France. And France is pretty laid back compared to the United States. But anyway, we had been there for, I don't know, 3 or 4 weeks, and she said, "Daddy, it's really strange. I've been here in France, and I really feel like I have so much more freedom in China than I do here." And I was just like, wow. It's just, freedom. What is your definition of freedom? And so obviously, people like the freedom that the Chinese have, and I can't.
And the technology is so good.
Yeah.
Except, you got to do this at 5:00 in the morning because everybody gets online.
Yeah, exactly. Hey, well, listen, Ron, we've been on for an hour. We need to.
I'm shocked.
We need to get off, because if it goes over an hour, people start getting
Oh, I know. You could break it up into 15-minute segments.
No, I know. Yeah, but anyway, I have learned so much from you. I am so impressed that the Tea Party actually started because they called BS on the 9/11 Commission, and
Yeah.
and I am so.
Well, that's been proven out too. With the now we can sue the Saudis.
Yeah, and so I'm very impressed. I've learned a lot.
So have I.
And I can see why you all are the real patriots. I mean, what would be really nice would be is if the Tea Party could somehow organize direct democracy. That would be the ideal.
Well, we didn't want to be a political party. That we rejected that, and so now what we're starting up is the Jackson Hillsdale Libertarian Party.
Okay.
And the last election, the never Trumpers went ahead and threw a hell of a lot of money into Gary Johnson and with the Libertarian Party, and he saw what was happening, so he started acting real stupid on the media to blow it out so it would help Trump win.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I admire you. I mean, you come from a family that has been politically involved in society, and I admire your parents, and I admire you. And you're 63, and you could go to the golf course every day, but it sounds like you're really trying to make it your town and your area a better place for everybody.
Well, I have one of my friends is a doctor. He said a psychologist, and I said I'm starting the Tea Party, and he went, "Oh, really?" He's from New York, Bronx. And everyone needs a hobby.
Well, it sounds like a lot more than a hobby.
Well, you got a passion. I got a fire in the belly for this stuff.
I can tell.
I love my freedom. I love it. And I want other people, because if you aren't free, you need. And that's where we kind of got into this anarcho-capitalism. We want rule of law, but not rule by rulers.
Yeah, yeah. Actually,
it's like you, and that's Dan Collins. He's got the China Money Report. He's been living over there for 19 years. And he said the difference between China and America is China is run by engineers who have 10, 20, 30-year plans. Ours is run by lawyers who sit there and say, what's my quarterly profits?
Yeah, exactly.
And that's got to change. That's got to change.
Yeah. Well, listen,
Jeff, you've been wonderful.
You've been wonderful,
really
too.
Enjoyed this. Maybe we should talk again, maybe in another month, or
yeah, exactly.
Unless we're at war with each other and we never talk to each other
That's
again.
That's right. Well, no, I'll get you back on. This has been very interesting, and you actually, we kind of ran out of time here, but you had some other questions about China, so I'll get you back on. And we'll continue the conversation. You've been super, Ron. Thanks a million.
And buy his book.
I appreciate that.
Buy Jeff's book.
China Rising. Thank you, Ron. I really appreciate it. Listen, I'll have this up, send you the link, and I hope you can share it with all your friends and compatriots in Michigan after it's up online.
Oh, it goes out nationally.
Cool. Hey,
all right.
Listen, Ron, take care. Keep up the good fight.
You too, sir. Be bad and be frosty.
Talk to you later. Bye-bye.
All right. Bye-bye.